Core system login in progress.
Alrighty, welcome to VS Lab 1. Jump over to Unity, right click on the Voxel folder, under scripts, create a new folder called VS Lab 1. Open that folder. Inside of it, right click, add a C# script called VS Lab 1. Up here in the hierarchy, select the VS Lab 0 and click that little button to turn it off. We're not going to delete it, we'll leave it alone, but just go ahead and turn it off. Right click on single labs, create empty, name that new game object VS Lab 1, drag VS Lab, the one VS Lab 1 script onto the VS Lab 1 game object. Save, double click on VS Lab 1 to open it inside of Visual Studio. Hopefully you still have VS Lab 0 open, because for the first part all we're going to do is copy the whole thing. Inside VS Lab 0, I simply Control-A to select everything, Control-C to copy everything, jump back to VS Lab 1. If you don't have VS Lab 0 open, you can open it. Inside of VS Lab 1, Control-A to copy, select everything, and Control-V to paste. Jump to the top because we have all of these errors, and rename VS, where it says VS Lab 0, rename it back to VS Lab 1 and save. And we are ready to go.
Access granted.
Alrighty. Let's jump back to Visual Studio. We need some new properties, a new enum that is going to be used for editing our input mode. This is pretty simple. So we will have none, of course, because we need a mode to say that we're not doing anything. We'll have place when we're placing blocks on our chunk. Material, because we want to change the material of a chunk or a block. Erase, remove a chunk. And identify, tell us all about that chunk, what material it's using, and what shape it is. Although we only have two shapes right now, none and block. We'll shortly have the ability to have as many shapes as we want.
Access granted.
Alrighty. So we are going to right here under update, we're going to create a new method called void handle input. That will be called from the bottom of update if our state is equal to pause and our input mode is not equal to none. And we'll handle our input. Okay, but we also need a couple more new properties. Because as we are handling input, we want some method to show us what we have selected. So up here underneath our two booleans, generate it and create a new game object called preview and a material called preview material, and then another float called click distance. Make it 500. It's an extremely long distance, but it'll work for us. We're going to be floating around most of the time. And then a short called preset in. and that will be what material we have selected. Now down here, add an else if statement to the bottom of update under our other statement. If our preview is not equal to null, destroy it. Mainly because if we're not handling the input, then we want to get rid of the preview. Next up, we got to create our preview.
Access granted.
And the first part of create preview will take place in the base shape. So Control M0 to collapse everything. Go up to evaluate preview. Right below it, we're going to add another virtual void called evaluate preview. This one will be much simpler than our other preview. It will take and evaluate results, and that's it. We'll go ahead and do a try catch around it. And we'll pass in 0 for our offset, 0 for all of our positions. The only thing we're really passing in is our results. Paste it down there 5 more times and just change each create side to the proper create side. And our evaluate preview is done.
Access granted.
Alrighty. Now right underneath Get Neighbors, so scroll back up or select VS Lab in our class selection and then go to Get Neighbors, and right below it we're going to create a private void create preview function. This is pretty straightforward, but it's a pretty good bit of code here. Now our preview will most likely, or should be, always null when we hit this right now. Later on when we have more shapes, when you have more shapes, what will happen is instead of, or when you change your selected shape, you're going to call this again. And you don't want to go through the hassle of destroying everything. So you won't do this part. You won't recreate everything. You don't really have to use a temp vertices in this one. So we don't have to copy everything over. Since this won't be used again and again, it will only be used when we go to or leave an edit mode. So we'll just use our main methods, our main arrays. There we go. Create preview is done. Let's run up here and call it. So jump up to the handle input. And if our preview is equal to null, create the preview. Rock and roll.